For thousands of years, finding a partner in the Stone Age was surprisingly simple. If two ancient humans liked each other, they usually met while gathering berries, hunting mammoths, or sitting around the evening campfire. There were no awkward introductions, no confusing signals, and definitely no dating advice from anyone. If someone smiled back, you were probably doing well. If they threw a rock at you, well, that was a pretty clear answer too. Life wasn't perfect, but at least nobody had to wonder whether they had been left on read. One afternoon, after returning from another unsuccessful attempt to impress a girl by wrestling a wild boar, Rock sat outside his cave feeling defeated. Across the village, he watched another hunter confidently walk up to the same girl carrying a giant mammoth steak. Within seconds, she smiled and walked away with him. Rock sighed dramatically. There has to be an easier way than chasing mammoths just to get someone's attention. Just then, an idea struck him. He picked up a flat stone and began scratching strange symbols onto it with another rock. Curious villagers gathered around him. "Imagine," Rock said excitedly, "instead of running around the entire valley looking for someone, everyone could simply make a profile about themselves. You could tell others your favorite food, your hobbies, and even how many mammoths you've hunted. Then people could choose who they wanted to meet." The entire tribe stared at him in complete silence. One old villager scratched his head and asked, "So, instead of talking to someone, you stare at a rock first?" Another hunter looked confused and whispered, "That sounds incredibly lazy." But the younger members of the tribe were fascinated. They immediately began carving little pictures of themselves onto flat stones. One proudly drew enormous muscles that he clearly didn't have. Another claimed he could wrestle 3 mammoths at once, even though everyone knew he once lost a fight to a chicken. Before long, nearly every ancient human was busy creating the most impressive version of themselves. By sunset, hundreds of carved stone profiles were neatly lined up outside the chief's cave. The tribe proudly named their invention Stone Match. The chief looked at the growing pile of profiles, smiled proudly, and declared, "Tomorrow, love will become much easier." Nobody realized that by sunrise, prehistoric dating was about to become far more complicated than mammoth hunting ever was. The next morning, the entire village gathered around the giant pile of Stone Match profiles. Instead of hunting mammoths, everyone spent hours flipping through flat stones, searching for the perfect match. Some people rejected a profile simply because the drawing wasn't flattering, while others chose someone only because they claimed to own the biggest cave. The hunters quickly discovered they were getting far more attention if they exaggerated their achievements. Suddenly, almost every profile claimed "professional mammoth hunter," even though half of them had never caught anything larger than a rabbit. Rock proudly picked up the first profile. It showed a smiling cave woman who had written, "Loves sunsets, fresh berries, and long walks by the river." Excited, he carved a giant heart onto her stone and proudly sent it to her cave. A few minutes later, another hunter walked past carrying an even bigger heart carved into an enormous rock. Soon, everyone started competing to send the biggest, fanciest hearts. Before long, the village looked less like a tribe and more like a construction site filled with giant heart-shaped stones. But Stone Match soon created unexpected problems. One cave woman received so many carved hearts that they completely blocked the entrance to her cave. Another hunter accidentally sent his heart to the wrong person and suddenly found himself planning a date with someone's grandmother. The chief proudly announced, "This system is working perfectly." Just then, 2 hunters arrived claiming they had both matched with the same person. They immediately began arguing over whose carved heart had arrived first, while the confused cave woman quietly slipped away without either of them noticing. As the sun began to set, nobody was talking face to face anymore. Instead, everyone sat outside their caves nervously waiting for someone to send them another carved heart. Rock looked around the strangely quiet village and smiled. Stone Match had become an overnight success. But he had no idea that tomorrow would bring something even stranger. The world's very first prehistoric date. The following morning, excitement filled the entire village. After days of exchanging carved hearts and impressive stone profiles, it was finally time for the first official stone match dates. Nobody really knew what a date was supposed to look like, but that didn't stop everyone from acting like experts. Hunters polished their spears, gatherers decorated themselves with colorful feathers, and one man spent 3 hours trying to make his hair look exactly like the drawing on his profile. Rock was especially nervous. He had matched with the cave woman who loved sunsets and berries, and today was their first meeting. Wanting to make a good impression, he arrived at the river carrying a huge basket of berries. Unfortunately, while waiting for her, he became hungry and accidentally ate half of them himself. By the time she arrived, the basket looked suspiciously empty. "Rock," she asked, raising an eyebrow, "didn't your profile say you were generous?" Embarrassed, he quickly handed over the remaining berries and changed the subject. The next morning, the chief gathered the tribe and made one simple rule. Profiles can start a conversation, but they can't replace one. From then on, Stone Match was only used to help people meet. The real connection happened face to face. Soon, the village was happier than ever. As Rock smiled at the couples laughing around the campfire, he realized that even in the Stone Age, the best matches weren't made by a stone. They were made by being yourself. And somewhere deep inside a cave, one lonely caveman looked at his stone profile, sighed, and muttered, "Maybe I should have used a better drawing." Meanwhile, other dates across the village were going even worse. One hunter claimed on his profile that he could communicate with animals. To prove it, he spent an hour making strange noises at a mammoth, only for the mammoth to spray mud all over him. Another villager had described himself as the strongest man in the valley, but during his date, he struggled to lift a small log while his match lifted it effortlessly with one hand. Nearby, a cave woman discovered that the hunter who claimed to own a giant cave was actually living in his parents' cave. By evening, disappointment was spreading across the tribe. Many people had discovered that their matches looked very different from their stone drawings, while others realized that most profiles had been wildly exaggerated. As the villagers shared their terrible date stories around the campfire, the chief frowned. Stone Match was supposed to make finding love easier, but instead it seemed to be creating confusion, arguments, and embarrassment. And the next day, things would become even worse when the tribe discovered a brand new problem: fake profiles.